All right. I think we have connection now. All right. Good morning.
Namaste, everyone. I want to welcome you to our SMYLE Podcast. This is Maa Yoga Life Experience, where we take some time to sit together and have a conversation about the path. So my name is Sadhvi Kadambari Maa. I have been living here in Haridwar in India with Guru Maa at the ashram here since 2011, really, with a few breaks in between. And so I've been here for quite a while. And in 2012, I actually took Sannyas Diksha, initiation with Guru Maa. But I was initiated onto the spiritual path 20 years ago. So I've been sort of practicing meditation for quite a while. So our Guru, Mataji, her full name is Sri Sri 1008 Mahamandaleshwar Adi Shakti Satigiriji Maharaj of Niranjani Akada. But we call her Ma or Guru Ma, and that's how she prefers to be called. So I'm very happy and excited to have this conversation today with my dear friend, Kalavati Devi, also known as Christy SMYLE or Dr. Christy. And it's a great pleasure to have her here online. We're connecting India and California over the airwaves to have this conversation live.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a great pleasure. So we first met in Rishikesh, I think it was 2017.
Mm-hmm. At the retreat.
At the retreat in Rishikesh. And that was actually the year you met Guru Maa for the first time. Mm-hmm. So just before I invite you to start speaking, I'd just like, for those who haven't heard of you or met you, just a little brief introduction about Kalavati Devi. So Kalavati Devi has a doctorate of Ayurveda. So that's why she's a doctor, Christy SMYLE. And she has, I think, maybe 25, 30 years experience in Western medical science, and the last however many years since becoming involved in Ayurveda, integrating the two styles or models of healing. And as far as I know, you're very passionate about wellness and about spreading awareness for how to live the ideal lifestyle in a holistic way, mind, body, and soul. And you came in touch with yoga at some point. This is what I would like to invite you to describe for us, how this all happened, how you actually went from being a nurse practitioner, a science graduate, to coming in touch with the Eastern path, Ayurveda yoga. You're a yoga teacher trainer now. You're a sacred artist, musician, many bhakti yogi, many paths have come together in your life. And so my first question to you is to perhaps give us a little bit of a feel for your background, how you were raised and how your connection with the power of healing came into your life. Also, you mentioned to me one time that the Divine Mother, in one form or other, has been part of your life even since being a child. So how that formed your childhood, then of course all the ups and downs that we go through as we go into adolescence and beyond, and studies and then work, and how that brought you to the Eastern model of healing and wellness.
Wow. Where do I even start? Well, I was born here in California, Pomona, California, and still in this area. And I remember at about the age of 4, somebody asked me, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" And I thought to myself, don't we already know what we're going to do? It's a strange question. They asked me like it was some sort of mystery. And I said, I'm going to heal people. And they looked at me and they were like, you're very certain about that. And I was like, yes, I am. And, my mom was in heavy construction. She's a heliarc welder, and my dad was a mechanic. So there's not really any medical people in my family. And I wasn't really exposed to much in the way of healing, but my mom always had like welding burns on her, and I was always interested in tending to them and healing them and doing things like that. And I think it was about age 14 or so, I thought, you know what, I need to get a job taking care of people. And just going down the Western medical route, by the time I was 15, I was already looking into applying at Cal State San Bernardino. I was determined I was going to be an RN. That was it. I was going to go straight into the hospital and take care of the sick and the dying. And around that time, I got a job. I applied for this little job that was on the board at the high school. And it said, you had to be a certain age, and I wasn't the age yet. And it was just taking care of somebody in their home. And so I called up the gentleman and I said, look, I'm really mature, I'm really responsible, and I'm really strong. I can help take care of your wife because she was dying of cancer. And so I got that job, and I'd ride my little 10-speed bike up there and took care of her until she died. And I thought, this is it. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I want to take care of people who are sick and dying. Why I was going to go that route, that's just what I was going to do. I thought it was one of the best gifts I could give people, to help them move out of this physical realm in a dignified way. So I did that for a little while. And then by the time I was 17, I was already at Cal State San Bernardino, finished up my RN lickety split, got that done. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to have a baby now. And my husband was like, no, keep going to school. And I was like, no, now I want to bring a child into the world, because I always knew I would have one child. And so I applied over at Loma Linda, and I finished up the nurse practitioner master program. And I thought, okay, this is it. I'm working in the ER. Now I'm saving lives instead of escorting people out of life. Now it's time to bring life in. So I had my daughter, and I just thought to myself, this is great. Everything is going exactly the way I had it planned. I'm healing people, I'm saving lives. I've got, my master's degree in nurse practitioner. I'm working in the ER, the intensive care unit. And I always say that at that moment, I realized here I was dealing with everybody else's pain and suffering, but I hadn't dealt with my own. And so I felt very spiritually and emotionally bankrupt at that time in my life. I didn't appear to be, I had everything put together well, but something was just dramatically missing and wrong on the inside. So I thought, well, I've always done kind of stretching and things like that. And, a couple of my friends said, why don't you go take a yoga class? And I was like, yeah, that's great. I'll look good. I'll go do some fitness, And at that time, that's what I thought it was. I had no idea. And I was saying just the other day, I found myself laying there on the mat at the end of class crying. I was like, this isn't what I signed up for. I wanted a fitness class, not a crying class. But then, rapidly I figured out that yoga was not about the fitness at all. It was a spiritual journey. So I started yoga teacher training at Green Tara in Upland. They're not there anymore. Most yoga studios have a kind of a short lifespan in this area. And I finished up my 200-hour yoga teacher training, and boof, mind was blown. I was like, oh, I'm supposed to breathe? I wasn't aware of that. I'm supposed to, or I have the option to go inside and be silent and meditate. Wow, that's an ugly place to be, actually. It was a really ugly terrain on the inside because there was a lot of unresolved things. So I finished up my 200 hour and I was like, that's not enough. I immediately want to continue going on. So I finished up my 500 hour. And I really focused my studies. I was lucky because Green Tara had a program set up where I could look into specialty concepts and study yogic concepts, not just your standardized, let's all do sun salutations for 500 hours. So I really started looking into mental health and yoga. And I thought to myself, wow, how can I apply this to my clients at the hospital? So I finished up my 500 hour program, and somewhere in the middle of that, I started my doctorate program in Ayurveda because one thing led to another, one thing led to another. And so I studied for thousands of hours under Dr. J.A. Gopal at the American University American University of Complementary Medicine, and completed that doctoral program. And then I was like, ooh, how can I really start applying this into medicine? And I thought, well, before I do that, I'd better apply all of this to myself. It's like you don't just learn something and then just put it on people. You have to really do the inner work yourself. And there was a lot of inner work I'd been putting off. I didn't want to do it. It's ugly, it's uncomfortable, it's triggering, it's et cetera, et cetera. We all have our internal demons that are chewing on the insides of us. So, I went through Ayurvedic Panchakarma. So the Panchakarma process was a process of detoxifying the body. And I thought, well, I'm not that toxic, I'm appropriate height and weight. My blood pressure is good. My cholesterol is good. What kind of detoxification are you talking about here? And, Dr. J just kind of nodded at me and took my evaluation, gave me a bunch of strange herbs, purged me physically. I didn't realize I could feel that much better, actually. But what hooked me was the fact that I mentally changed. So the process of my body becoming detoxified changed the way my brain actually worked. It changed the way I perceived the world. And then when I added in all the yoga sciences and coupled it with the Ayurveda sciences, applied it internally, I would say that I just became somebody different. Or perhaps I could say I returned to myself. I became closer to what it was that I would have manifested as a human, an individual, a personality before Western toxicity of food, Western toxicity of society, toxicity of life that happens, So that's kind of a roundabout story there, but it's completely changed everything. I would never go back to what I was before I started practicing yoga and Ayurveda. And, I struggled for quite a few years to introduce it into my medical practice at the hospital because up until last year, I was doing workman's comp injury. I was doing advanced wound healing, and I would integrate a lot of different things. Okay, you hurt your back, let's do this stretch. It was a yoga. Let's do this breathing technique before you take your narcotics. And let's see if we can reduce it, etc. Or, here's a YouTube link. Here's this, here's that, here's this. Work on these things. But really kind of lost motivation because the Western model is take a pill. And I would say, okay, well, I want you to do this meditation. I want you to do this breath work. I want you to do these poses. I'd like you to eliminate these inflammatory, agitating foods from your diet. And albeit many of the patients would benefit from it, but the amount of work that they were willing to put in, too many times for me fell short. So I was just like, okay, I'll refer you to the surgeon. And I was fortunate enough that the 2 locations I was working at, I had more time to spend with the patients, to really sit with them, to counsel them, to educate them. But, in a lot of locations where you work as, let's say, a nurse practitioner or an MD, let's take an urgent care shift, for example. There's some urgent cares where you as a medical provider in a 12-hour day see over 80 people. How are we going to teach them anything preventative? You don't. You walk in, you take a look at them. They're not acute. They're not dying. They're not septic. Boom. Prescription, treatment, x-ray, casting, out the door. And then they get a little, education pamphlet. But I just couldn't do what it was that in my heart I wanted to do. Yeah. So I've been on
So what I'm hearing there is that you started off with supporting people as they were dying, death and dying, or caring for those who were dying. Then you went more into healing, helping people to find some, healing through the Western model. And then you came to the point where you realized that was a dead end. You weren't getting those real substantial healing results, which you knew were possible because you had experienced it yourself. Yeah. And so then that took you into the next phase, I guess, where you, I think probably even recently, you've taken a sabbatical this year. You wanted to perhaps clear your vision about where your path is going. So before we go there, I would like to go back now just a little bit, 2017, when you met Guru Maa in Haridwar, when you came to India. And even before that, you mentioned to me that you had experiences with the Divine Mother that was like when you were in traumatic situations or stress or danger or whatever, that you didn't feel alone, that you had some divine presence there with you. I'd like to sort of hear how that sort of wove itself through your life. And then you had a strong connection with Lord Ganesh at some point when you were having a bit of a downer. So obviously these things were coming into your life before even yoga.
Yeah, it was, as a kid, it was kind of scary, actually, to be connected to the divine, because I didn't understand it. So, I was baptized Catholic when I was born, and I think I was about 8 years old, and I had decided I wanted to be baptized in a metaphysical church. So I got rebaptized. I just demanded on it. And, I would always find myself as a kid walking down the street to different churches. There was this one church down the street where they would all, sing and scream and yell and roll on the floor. And I just thought, wow, I don't know what all this greatness is, but this is just fantastic. This is greatness, because you could feel it. And, I didn't really understand religion, and I didn't really feel a connection to religion, but I knew there was some sort of juice there. There was some sort of je ne sais quoi, what is this? And I was, I don't know, maybe 6. And I've told this story before. I used to go, my mom was able to get me into a private school for a little while. And it was a private Christian school. And I think chapel was on Wednesday. So all the little kids would sit around and hold hands, which I didn't like doing to begin with, but they all held hands, little sticky paws, and they would all sing songs that Jesus loved them and this they knew. And I thought, well, Jesus might love you, but he doesn't love me. This is clear. And I remember one day they were singing and I felt it. I felt that love of the divine. Because my contact with divinity prior to that, so a lot of people, they know that I'm a Kali devotee. And Kali's not exactly gentle appearing. So there were many instances in my life where I was going through difficulty, sometimes even trauma, and I would see this vision of her appear. And it was actually scary. It wasn't necessarily comforting. And I started associating her presence with trauma. I started experiencing visions of her, but it scared me. I didn't understand who she was. I had never seen her. I remember it was probably, 8 or so. And maybe I was 9. I was living with my grandma at the time. And every night I would wake up screaming, "Oh my gosh." I would like run down the hallway, wake up the entire house because I could see her in the corner of my room, swirling around and moving with her, crazy wild hair and this dark black blue figure. And she scared me. So I would wake up and alert the entire house that we were in danger, that, there was somebody in my room, and et cetera, et cetera. And night after night after night, my family was just like, this is like, she's crazy. Maybe she's schizophrenic. And so they finally took me to a priest, and maybe they thought I was possessed. I don't know. So they took me to this priest, and the lady sat me down and she said, "No, you're just special. Like you can see things that other people don't see." She said, "But you don't need to be afraid." And so she taught me this whole practice of going inside and seeing a light inside and putting, light protective barriers around me. And she said, "Tell whoever it is that you're seeing that they scare you." So after that, the practices I was doing, she was only outside the window. She was a little more distant. And then things changed in my life. I went back home to live with my mom. And I kind of, at that time, didn't want to see anything anymore. So I blocked out seeing images or appearances, but I could still feel this divine presence with me. And it began to shift and change the way it felt, but I kind of kept it on my back perception burner because I didn't want to be afraid, like that's not a good combination, divinity and fear. But, eventually I learned that, let's take Kali Maa, for example. If you are full of fear, what are you going to have reflected back to you? Fear. If you are full of pain, in the presence of, at least in my experience, that divinity, I had reflected back to me what was inside of me. So I still didn't really understand the whole 9 yards. I don't know what year it was. I was 30 something. I started going to the Vedic temple here in Montclair. And I'd go in there and they would do all these bhajans and kirtan and meditation. And I thought, I'm not even sure what all this is, but boy, I sure feel good when I'm in here. It's just like the church down the street when I was a kid. I don't know what's going on here, but I really enjoy it. And I remember one day after the whole puja and everything was done, my daughter was like, "I want to go to the gift shop." I said, "You want to go to the gift shop?" "Of course you want to go to the gift shop." So I went into the gift shop. I turned the corner and there was this beautiful 4-foot wooden carving of this elephant, and I just stopped. And I could feel my whole body just begin to reverberate. And I looked at the lady, I said, "What is this? What is this?" And she said, "You mean, who is this?" I said, "Okay, who is this?" And she said, "This is Ganesh." I was like, "Who's that?" She told me a little bit. I said, "Well, whoever it is, they're coming home with me." And so I had this beautiful statue of Ganesh centerpieced in my house. And I would just find myself sitting on the floor, and he was up on top of a big trunk. So, my little head would be up on the top of the trunk, and putting all my little goodies up there. And I would put some flowers and some crystals and some doodly doddly doos. My daughter would put paintings up there and pictures and scribbles, and I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew I wanted to sit there. And I went through a really kind of dark phase, just a really hard time in life. And I'd find myself just sitting there at the base of this statue, just crying and crying and crying and crying. I was like, why do I cry at this statue so much? It's just a wood carving of an elephant. And so at that time, I was going through some recovery process. And one of my friends, Jerry, he gave me a book about Ganesh. I was like, I know who this is. This is the statue I have in my house. So I started reading through the book, and all of it was foreign to me. And before you knew it, combined with all the Ayurveda experience and teaching and yoga teacher training, everything just dovetailed into itself. And one of my friends, Kathy Bolta, she said, "You want to lead a retreat to India?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." What are we going to do? She was like, "Well, you can teach some yoga and some meditation." And I was like, "Sure." And she said, "We're going to go sing for this guru." I was like, "Oh, well, okay. I don't know who that is, but sure, let's go." I was just kind of an accidental happening for me. And one thing led to another. And I just kept digging and digging and digging and reading and reading and learning and learning and learning. And I wouldn't say that I didn't take it seriously, because I took it very seriously. But there was a little bit of a disconnect. I was like, well, I'm a Westerner. Who am I to be chanting these chants that I learned in Ayurveda? But, my teacher was like, "No, you need to chant these. These are the healing mantras. We do these during Abhyanga. We do these during Shirodhara. Like, you need to learn these, memorize these." I was like, okay. I don't want to step on toes. Like, I kind of feel like I'm in unknown territory here. But he was like, "No, like, you have to learn these mantras. You need to learn about all these different religious / not religious, spiritual intelligences that assist us." I was like, okay, I will. And I'll do it in a way that fits into the Western model. But even then I had conflict with it. So I just decided I'm just going to approach it like a child and not worry what other people think about me. Yeah.
So that leads us to 2017, where you came to the ashram in Haridwar and you sang with Kathy, and I was also there. And you had your first meeting with Maa, and in fact, it was a whole group of like 10, 12 people that you brought from America with you. And they all came and had the experience here of an Indian ashram, away from Rishikesh, because Rishikesh is a bit more touristy, let's say. And that was your first experience of something new, I guess, to sit at the feet of a guru, to sit at the feet of a saint. And that started this last phase, or this current phase. And I'm just interested to know how that was, that day for you, and then what transpired after that for you, because you got a spiritual name, you took Diksha, you received the Guru Mantra. And for someone who's already doing yoga and meditation and chanting mantras, what is it that actually changed by having a guru and being in the company of a saint?
Well, first of all, I don't even think that when I arrived in Haridwar that I knew who I was in the presence of. I really didn't. But I knew when I came into her presence, something began to shift within me. Before we even began the program, before we began the kirtan and the celebrations, but I realized it when I sat in quarters with her and she took one look at me and she was like this, Kali. I was like, well, yeah, I love Kali. And she was like, no. And she started discussing things with me that she would have no idea. You don't just jump into a conversation and start saying these things about somebody. You could go wrong real fast, because here in the West, we have a lot of people who are psychic, or a lot of people who are seers, et cetera, et cetera. There's a fraud around every corner. And coming from this kind of environment where there's a spiritual guru fraud everywhere you look, truly, to sit down in front of her and have her just start verbatim telling me my life, my path, and where I was going in a very short, succinct manner really stunned me. I thought, she sees something that nobody else can see. And I really took everything that she said to heart. And when I returned home, it was as if I could still feel her presence. I could still hear her presence. I could still palpate her presence. And I'm sensitive that way, but it was really, really strong. And I remember at one point connecting in with you and doing a sadhana, a prayer series, when there was some things happening. And I felt so deeply connected with her that I just couldn't explain it. I had not experienced that with any other human being. And I've sat at the feet of some other gurus, etc. But my connection with her was profound. And so when I received Diksha and received the Guru Mantra and a spiritual name, I would say that literally everything in my life went through a accelerated combustion. Just everything began to change. And, I would say that a lot of times people will say, well, I have a mantra, I have mantras, I have a practice, I have, et cetera, et cetera. And I say, that's good. That's good. Actually, I was just writing a blog on the concept of guru. And I was reflecting back on the fact that I used to always say to myself, I'm just not the guru kind of person. That's just not for me. I don't want to submit or surrender to some mysterious spiritual person. Like, I don't know you. You could be a complete fraud. And it took me back to a moment when I was 20 something. I was in nursing school. And one of my preceptors said, all right, list 3 people who you respect and look up to. I was like, oh boy, it's my turn now, huh? I have to share. Everybody else just boom, boom, boom. They were able to list off names, who they respected, who they looked up to. And she got around to me and I was like, Dr. Davis, I'm going to be really honest. I don't look up to or respect anybody on this planet. Period. I don't trust. And I don't look up to anybody. And she was like, wow. And I remember when I came in contact with Adi Shakti Maa, I thought, I can look up to you. Like, you've achieved what it is that I've always wanted to achieve, which is true spiritual mastery, enlightenment, because you can feel it when you're in her presence. And so when she gave me the Guru mantra, or I received Diksha, I knew that it was up to me to dive in. You can't just sit at the feet of a guru and be like, okay, fix me. You know, because I would see how all the medical examples, people just keep coming to you, fix me, fix me. It's a never ending story. You know, it's the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. It just never ends. And so I knew, okay, I got to do the work. And I had that established confidence and adoration right off the bat of Adi Shakti Maa. And so I took the practices to heart and I just dug inside, because I had already done a lot of healing. So it was a comfortable terrain and a comfortable place to be. I had already mastered, okay, I know how to meditate, I know how to do pranayama, etc. And it was one of the most rapid transformations I ever went through. And then to take on a spiritual name, that was a completely different process also, you know, because certain places you can like send an email in and say, I'd like a spiritual name. And like they generate a spiritual name. Like, what's that? You know, that's not receiving a spiritual name personally from a guru. You know, you want to receive a spiritual name based off of a true living master who sees you, not just a computer generated name. So when she gave me my spiritual name, Kalavati Devi, I thought to myself, what am I supposed to do with this? What kind of name is this? I don't even know how to pronounce it yet. And of course, you know, I dug into the name and did a little research on it and got some more background information on it, backstory on it. And I thought to myself, what are my friends going to think? Like, well, what kind of name is this? What, people don't understand this. And I thought, you know what? I'm done with caring whether or not people understand. What am I supposed to do with this name? And then I realized I am supposed to become that which my guru sees in me. You're given that spiritual name because that is your pathway to take. And there's something very interesting about waking up in the morning and not saying, good morning, Christy SMYLE, but waking up and saying, good morning, Kalavati Devi, and knowing the meaning of the name, knowing that that is the new vibrational path to take for an accelerated transformation. And boy, has it been accelerated. It's been very accelerated.
So that brings us up to 2020. And you already planned to take a sabbatical before even knowing what was going to happen in this year. It was like somehow this year was mapped out very clearly for you. And I always see you with your butterflies, you know, you have that whole butterfly thing going on. And that whole transformation process, which you're very intimate with when you see butterflies and growing out of, you know, whatever they go through. And how has it been for you, that transformation and everything that's happened this year, that sort of like combustion I think that's been that energy that's here right now for transformation.
Well, you bring up the butterflies, and it's interesting to watch them go through transformation. You get a little egg on the leaf, a little butterfly comes and lays an egg on the milkweed, and a couple days later or a week or so, you see this little tiny caterpillar the size of smaller than a grain of rice. And some of them make it, some of them don't. They start molting and shedding their skin, and then they're kind of stuck and frozen and paralyzed. And I'd look at it and I was like, oh, like that's a little bit weird. Like, you haven't moved in days. Are you dead? And then all of a sudden the caterpillar starts molting and coming out of its shell. And then it eats and 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 eats. You know that story, the hungry caterpillar? They really are hungry little caterpillars. But I see that as our spiritual consumption. You got to study, learn. But sometimes you have to eat. It's interesting because the caterpillar, the milkweed, actually would be toxic for human consumption. It secretes a certain type of sap that makes it so, well, anyways, I'm not going to go down the weird biological role of a caterpillar, but it continues to eat, and it becomes so engorged that it then attaches itself, and it has to have a secure attachment. And then it goes into a chrysalis. I've been watching all the different caterpillars, and some of the stages are rather awkward and weird looking. And some of them don't make it. Some of them go through partial transformation, and then that's it. They die. You could kind of compare it to having to come back, do it all over again. The ones that are lucky, then they emerge from the chrysalis as a butterfly. And some emerge out of their chrysalis, not so good either. I've had all sorts of deformed butterflies and things of that nature. But, I've been really looking at myself and thinking, what does this look like? What does this type of transformation look like? What is it even? And then at the end of the day, I think to myself, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter what people think it looks like. It doesn't even really matter what I think it looks like. Just go in, do the work, and keep changing. Changing into what? I prefer to think of it as stripping down all the preconceived notions, conditionings, patterns, vrittis, disturbances, and isolating what is your most important thing during this lifetime. What is your dharma? Why I tell my students a lot of times, why were you born? Why'd you come here? Why are you here? Why were you born? And they look at me like, what? What do you mean? Why was I born? I go, yeah, why'd you come here? They're like, I go, well, you came here for a reason. Like, what's your life project? What's your human mission? And they're like, what? Why so much pressure? I'm like, come on, think about it. Because as a kid, I always knew I'm going to be a healer, period. I knew this coming into this life. And then I leave medicine. I've been on sabbatical for, I don't know, what is it, September now? 9 months now. And I've just had the opportunity to dive so far inward and to be so still and so quiet on the inside as well as the outside. I've been a little bit in isolation that my human mind, and I find this with other people, my human mind can't even conceive what it is. What is your highest potential of transformation? What is it? I saw a post the other day that said something like, whatever you think you're capable of doing, you're underestimating yourself. I was like, oh, okay. And I just find that the less I try to think about it, the less I try to problem solve it, analyze it, nitpick it, predict it, force it, the easier it is, you know. And it's this process of surrendering to divinity, surrendering to your pathway, and not surrender as in, oh, I'm just a doormat, you could do whatever you want, I surrender in this life. It's a matter of not fighting the process. And it's easy to fight the process of spiritual transformation because it looks weird. It feels weird. It forces you out of your previous patterns. It forces you out of your comfort zone. You know, I used to make different posts about the butterflies, and I would say, so what do you think this butterfly thinks? Like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Look at me. Ah! No, butterfly, they don't have those reactions. They just spontaneously begin to transform when it's appropriate and when it's time. Like Ma says, you know, we're flowers, we're going to bloom. Make sure that when you bloom, you have a beautiful fragrance. And so it's just been this really kind of magnificent process, actually. And what it is, well, it's too hard to describe. It's an inside journey, not an outside journey.
Right.
Yeah.
And how would you then describe the essence of Ma's path or teachings? Because when you spoke about that caterpillar eating and eating and eating, taking in knowledge, you know, and whether it's worldly knowledge, spiritual knowledge, and then that transformation starts where the caterpillar actually digests itself.
Yeah.
Like it turns into liquid. It liquefies itself through its own digestive process. And out of that dissolving, something completely new that it wouldn't have imagined being comes out, if it works, if it comes to fruition. But, you know, in a way, it's like you said, it's that stripping away. And so is this how you see this path that you're on now, that it really is dissolving a lot of the knowledge that you've acquired, or it's digesting and embodying it and integrating it and going through a synthesis or something like that?
Yeah. You know, first I would say that receiving instructions from a guru is very important, because there's so much out there to process. So much out there to process. There's so many different methods, techniques, schools of practice that have been invented, reinvented, changed, adapted, and really taken away from the essential roots or an actual lineage. So when I received the instructions of Ma's teachings, I thought, wow, I can do that. Like that's actually condensed, straightforward, and not difficult. You know, a lot of spiritual practices are very difficult. The only difficult thing is the tapas, the discipline to do it on a regular basis. You know, you have to put in the work. And why do we avoid putting in the work? Because we have to digest whatever it is that's being churned up through these practices. And the process of starting these teachings that she's given us really just has shown me that there's no shortcut, because you have to do the work. But there's a huge shortcut when you find true teachings, when you find a true lineage, when you're actually able to tap into a pathway that is already burning with that power, that Shakti. It'd be like if I said, Kadambari, I want you to go into this forest and find your way out. And you went through all the briar patch and up and down the hills and through the streams. And then you come out the other end, maybe 20 years later. You're like, wow, I made it. And then if I turned around and said, how come you didn't take the pathway I already made? You could have done it in a week. You could have been out in a week. I've already paved the road for you. I mean, you have to walk it. You have to do the journey yourself. But that's what it was like for me to come into a true lineage, a guru lineage, to be able to tap into that guru mantra and feel the energy already coming through, that transmission is already there. It's already established. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to take your machete for 20 years through the forest. You just sit, you do your basic practice, and you just put in the work. How quick do you want to get there? That depends on how much time you're willing to put in. Are you going to do 5 minutes meditation? Proper meditation. Or are you going to do 3 hours? And the more you do, sometimes the more that gets churned up. Yeah, that's the process. You have to detoxify yourself of deep down vrittis. But the more time I put in, just the faster it gets. It's like, how long are you going to walk on the path? Are you going to walk the path for 5 minutes and sit down? Or are you going to take a long time to get there? Or are you going to walk for 3 hours solid today? Oh, 3 hours solid, huh? All right, you're going to get there quicker. And that's been the process for me. It's a very interesting thing to try to describe.
Because in a way, it's like the advanced practice, let's say, coming in contact with the saints and the Mahatmas and the gurus and the yogis and the sages, and having that accelerated path becomes an advanced path. But the advanced path is actually the simplicity of doing one thing to its completion, like digging that one well. And keep digging that one well, and the simplicity of one well, and not jumping around doing many things at a time, and getting down to the water. Yeah,
I was, it was funny because just yesterday I was starting up a little blog on this subject, and I just want to read a few of the things that I had pulled out. The first thing that I was contemplating is the fact that one of my friends, Craig, always says that people treat their spirituality and spiritual progression like a cafeteria. I'll take a little of this and a little of that and a little of this and a little of that. And that looks good to me. That suits me. And that's where I want to be, and we kind of like pick and choose what suits our ego at that time, really. And, then I was reading in some of the writings about, let's say you're in a desert and you're really, really thirsty, right? And you run all around and you dig all these little shallow holes. Dig, 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 none there. Dig, 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 none there. Dig, 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 nope, none there. Oh, dig, dig, oh, a little bit. Little tiny bit of water came out. As Ma says, dig your well. So when we receive a lineage teachings, you stop, picking and choosing all these other things that suit you at the time or fascinate you, the shiny object syndrome. Oh, I want to try this type of thing. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to do this. I want to do that. No, you stick with one lineage and you dig an enormous well. So you could go, mud sipping in your little puddles that you're digging, or you can just keep digging the well and you're like this big bucket of water. Thank you. That's delicious. And I think that that's really important. You know, when I was looking back at a lot of some different quotes that I was pulling out, and I just feel inspired at the moment to share them. There was one from the Bhagavad Gita. Learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master or a guru, a true guru. Inquire from him, I put in parentheses, her, with reverence and render service unto them. Such an enlightened saint can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. I saw another really nice quote from Kabir. Without the perfect guru, the aspirant cannot attain perfection. You know, and it really solidified the fact that I used to say, well, I'm just not a guru kind of person. I didn't want to follow somebody else's instructions because I didn't trust. And I found this really beautiful quote from Mirabai. And it says, the jewel of Nam I have found. And for those of you who don't know what Nam is, it's the holy name or the holy names. So she says, the jewel of Nam I have found. My master gave me this precious wealth. By grace, I accepted this gift. My original treasure I have thus regained, letting go of useless material things. This treasure can neither be stolen nor squandered, and it keeps increasing from day to day. On the boat of truth, the true master is at the helm. With ease, I am ferried across the ocean of the world. In joy and happiness, I sing the glory of my Lord. And I thought to myself, yeah, it really is a gift to be given Nam, or to be given Diksha, to be given initiation into a true lineage, not a westernized hodgepodge gobbledygook kind of I'm your guru stuff, which is really what I find mostly of here in the United States. And then I just wanted to share one more here, a quote that was from Sant Baljit Singh from 2007. Even he who created this universe bows down at the feet of Ma. God could not create this world without the help of this power. The guru's position is much lower than that of Ma. And I started thinking about that. I was like, well, what does that mean? What does that mean? And for me, what I realized is here we are on this physical plane. We're in dense matter. But what is missing? What is missing? The Shakti is missing. The power is missing. The divinity is missing. Humans have been stripped of true divinity and true connection to Shakti. You know, we have some sort of belief systems, etc., and that's good. They, you know, you can stick with that. But what I realized was missing in my physical vessel was unadulterated faith, devotion, and Shakti. And when you open your physical, mental envelope to that pure Shakti with love and devotion, it's like drinking from the deepest well you've ever seen of the purest water, because you have to have a pure guru. You know, we have all these controversies right now, all these head honchos of, you know, these yoga lineages, horrible controversies, abuses, etc. And people are coming to me and they're saying, how can I even practice all my lineage practices now? You know, my guru has been proven to be a rapist. My guru has been proven to be, you know, blah, 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 all these like horrific accounts of horrible behavior. Who wants to drink from that well anymore? And their faith, their shraddha is so shaken and disturbed. They're kind of like this. What do I do now? I was drinking from a tainted well. I mean, they will always say I got wonderful practices. It still transformed my life. But for me, that was one reason why I didn't want to take a guru. And there are more male gurus. And I kind of had a trust issue there. I was like, I don't know about you. But when I met Adi Shakti Ma, I was like, this is a pure well to drink from. I can drink from this well with no fear, no anxiety, no trust issues. And it's a never-ending well. The more you drink, it just keeps filling and filling and filling and filling. So it's been a really interesting process, to say the least. But it's a process I'm never going back from. That's for sure. And it's really taught me that, you know, I can sew people up all day long. I can set your bones. I could do your x-rays. I can give you prescriptions all day long till the cows come home. At the end of the day, yes, I'm doing my dharma. Yes, I'm doing karma yoga. I'm, you know, doing what I came here to do. But really, what's the most important thing? Self-actualization. To find the unadulterated self, to find the self that is dwelling inside of you, stripped away from all the societal conditionings, you know. And then I would say, oh geez, what are people going to think? You know, I'm really kind of getting a little bit out there. And I remember I'll paraphrase a quote that when you glance upon the divine, truly glance and see divinity, that there's no going back. You know, there's the story of Shiva after he was exposed to divinity, although he's the Adi Guru. That there was a story of when he saw Krishna, that from then on he roamed the world with his hair matted and covered in ash. But, you know, sometimes the fullest manifestation of who we came here to be looks different from the cookie cutter, Americanized or Europeanized or whatever country somebody's from. That we just have to not worry about it. We just have to unfold. And like the butterfly says, are my wings pretty enough for you? The butterfly doesn't care. Butterfly's like this. Where's the rasa? Where's the nectar? And then it goes flying from flower to flower, just taking all the nectar, drinking from it. Doesn't worry if its spots are right. Is this wing too small, too big? Do I look good? Do I look right? No, it just naturally goes with the flow of nature.
Its own nature. And when you read the poetry of the bhaktas, you know, the devotional saints, whether it's Mirabai or who else do we have? Rumi, Hafiz, you know, whoever. You know, their mystical poetry, there's a lot of craziness in there, you know, drunken, intoxicated, you know, dancing naked in the streets type of thing. And that's really obviously a process of letting go of the conditioning to worry what other people think.
Yeah. And the conditioning to worry about what you think yourself. Right. You know, it's like, just release all of that. Just, I don't know. Sometimes I think divinity makes you look like a mad person.
Do you think there is a middle path ultimately that, you know, these are phases that we have to go through to come out the other end in a sort of balanced way that we can still live a worldly life and still be enlightened on the inside. You know, I mean, having a guru who has achieved something that we aspire to, obviously they are role models for us.
Yeah, you know, that's an interesting thing because I think that you can become radically hijacked by your own spiritual transformation at times. And that's why you go back to your fundamental teachings. That's why you go back to your core. All right, what's my dharma? What's my artha? Like, do I actually have enough resources to live? Do I need to, maybe I need to pay my bills. Maybe I need to get some mundane life activities done. And there does need to be a balance. And I like the teachings of Sri Maa, Guru Maa, and she'll say, you've got 3-5 hours a day you can dedicate to your spiritual practices, your meditation, your bhakti, your kirtan, your asana, whatever it is. But, you have to balance that with your duties, your seva, the taking care of your own body, serving other people. But I think the most important thing too is seeing every single function of life as serving your divinity. Waking up in the morning, when you make food, do it in a way that is serving divine. Would you make a pile of ugly slop of horrible food on purpose? I mean, if that's all you have, then you eat it with gratitude. But would you make food and offer it to God and go, here you go, here's Burger King burger? No, you would say, look what I made for you. And then you glance upon it and you consume it as if you're serving it to divinity. You're serving it to your own divinity. Would you take care of your body? If you could take your body up to heaven, let's just make up some crazy example. If when you left this realm and you went up to heaven and you took your body and you had completely abused it, didn't care about it whatsoever, ignored it, completely toxic, would you offer that body to God and say, here you go, I didn't really take care of it, it's completely beaten up, but here you go. Is it good enough for you? No. You want to offer divinity a place to exist in beauty. Just like if you have an altar space, are you going to take your bubble gum out and put it on your altar and blow your snot nose rag and throw it on your altar and, leave some rotten food on your altar and be like this? How's that? Is that divine enough for you? Or are you going to make your environment beautiful and offer that as an act of service, as an act of making everything you do sacred when you interact with people? If everybody is a spark of divinity, a manifestation, an incarnation of divinity, when I meet somebody, if I judge them and put them down and backbite them and say, oh, you're this, you're that, blah, 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 I'm doing that to divinity. So we have to keep these things in mind. How do we serve our spiritual pathway? Doing weeding. I didn't like weeding at all. I was like, I don't want to do yard work. There's all these bugs and business and my nails are all dirty. Then I got to clean them before I go to the hospital. Now I spend hours sometimes out in the backyard tending to forms of divinity. Even the ants, the bugs, the bees, talk to the plants, love the plants. Don't be like, oh, I gotta go do yard work now. All of these things that sometimes we see as, this is difficult, this is hard. Oh, I gotta go to a job that's not glorious, it's not glamorous. Yeah, but that affords you enough cash to live where you're living. Maybe that's not even the greatest, but you've got a roof over your head, you have food in your mouth, hopefully, to do your spiritual work. All of the mundane things that we do should be done in an act of service. Service to the divine, service to our own divinity. Exercising. People say, oh, I don't want to exercise. You're doing it for the fact that the divine is existing inside of you. Are you going to give it a nasty temple? A dirty, congested, toxic, weak temple? No, you're going to do the best you can, given what you have, even if you're in a wheelchair or a convalescent home. You're going to try to treat your body as the residing place of divinity and not gripe about everything in life. People gripe about so much in life. That's one thing I enjoy about not being around many people right now. I'm kind of in a little isolation pocket right now, is I don't have to hear everybody's complaining, you know? And I realize, why are people complaining so much about everything? My mom would call it Cadillac problems. You know, they have this nice home, they have a nice family, they have this, and they're still griping. No contentment, no santosha. Me, I got to do all this. There's no room for divinity to manifest when that griping is occurring. And so every act of life can be an act of seva, an act of interacting with divinity, cultivating divinity. It requires a change of lenses for people to get there.
And I think a lot of people, you know, maybe they don't have that divinity in their life. They don't have the faith. They don't have the understanding of that. But I think everybody knows that the search for love is a real thing, you know, like the search to have love in your life, to feel love from the outside, to feel love from the inside. And, you know, the divinity is love. So it's bringing that love into your life, isn't it? In everything you do, that loving awareness, that loving attention, that loving interaction.
Yeah.
Compassion and love.
That's, love is a hard thing. I think one of my favorite songs is Love is Gonna Save Us, you know? And, you know, people say, well, love's not enough. Well, it really is enough. There's just a lot of deconditioning that needs to occur to be open to it, to be a clear reflecting mirror of it. You know, like Ma says, she said recently in a satsang, paraphrasing, the world, you will experience pain in the world. But you need to empty yourself of that pain. You need to, as I like to say when I'm not being formal, you got to forget about it. You know, you got to let it go, because otherwise that's all you're reflecting back out into the world is pain. You're an oozing infected wound in the world. And how do you just forget about it? You know, that's really easier said than done, just to forget about this pain and this suffering, the everything that is wrong in the world. Right. But it's really necessary if you're going to be an agent that's able to reflect the highest degree of unadulterated love. Love for the bug, love for the plant, love for the food, love for your neighbor, no matter what color, race, religion, or background they are. And love is such a weird term in and of itself. What does love mean? Does that mean that I have to give you everything I have? Does that mean that I have to be intimate with you? Does that mean that I have to call you on the phone twice a week? Does that mean I have to marry you? Does that mean I have to accept you for what you are? And we had a conversation recently about love, unconditional love. What is unconditional love? I was talking to a friend about it yesterday too. Unconditional love is being able to witness somebody, to simply witness them without any reaction to their sweetness or bitterness, to just be able to completely observe and witness them and say this, I witness you. Not go like this, oh, what's that? What's this? Oh, I really like that about you. I don't like that about you. I love this about you. Oh, I hate this about you. Even on the inside, when we feel that and react to somebody on the inside, they feel it, even if the words are unspoken. But to be able to be as non-reactionary as possible and to just be able to accept everything as it is, the bitter and the sweet. True, we want to work for a better place, but it has to be on the inside. We have to go inside of ourselves and keep doing the spiritual practice until we can pop out the other end and say, I love me. I really love me. I love me. I love me. I love the divine. I love the divine in the flowers. I love the divine in the ant that's in my hair. I love the divine in my stinky chihuahua. I love the divine in that grumpy old man. I love the divine. And I love me. Because until we can accept and witness and love ourselves unconditionally, to just witness ourselves unconditionally, we can't do that externally. We'll always be saying, yeah, but you're kind of short. Yeah, but you're kind of this. Yeah, but you're kind of that. And we have to, in my opinion, stop reacting to everything in the world. Go inside, do your inner work, and to be able to come out and say, I love all of the divinity in me. The weird looking part, the great looking part, all of it. And only then can we walk out into the world and do the same for somebody else. Yes. And I think that for me, the deepest way, the quickest way to get there on the deepest level is to do the work inside, do the inside work, trudge it up, just get out, get everything moving on the inside, go dive down in there, get back down in there. It was uncomfortable, get back down in there, go back into your work, go inside. That's uncomfortable, get back in there, face it, witness it. Okay, there it is. And churn it until amrut, nectar, comes out.
Oh, wow. That's been a conversation and a half. And I thank you, Kalavati, for sharing your heart and your wisdom and your life experience and your melting pot and your transformational process. It's been very touching to witness you. I have really witnessed you over these years, so it's been very heartwarming for me. And so I thank you too much for today's conversation. And if there's any last words you want to say to our listeners, please share them. Otherwise,
I kind of just felt like you and I were having our own conversation.
Yeah, well, we are. I don't know if anyone's going to watch. So be it.
I would say, if anybody's interested in following the pathway, to contact, yourself or I, and we can help point a finger which direction it is. And I'll just end the conversation in gratitude to Guru Ma.
Jai Mata Di. Hara Hara Mahadev, Hara Hara Mahadev.
Oh, and then we could erupt into singing.
Yeah.
We'll do that another day. All right, Kadambari. Thank you very much for having me.